All right, guys, it's time to review the new Superman. Let's get into it. There are a lot of people that have created this divide among Superman fans, and what's really interesting to me is James Gunn and Zack Snyder are friends in real life. Henry Cavill and David Cornsweet have both complimented each other's performance as Superman. So the divide between Zack Snyder and James Gunn fans is created by the fans. There is no studio agenda to push one movie over the other. It's just the fan base that's creating this toxicity, not too dissimilar to Star Wars. And so here's the thing: I think the people who are saying you're not a real Superman fan if you like this version or if you like that version, my take on that is, as someone who has enjoyed multiple actors' performances as Batman and multiple actors' performances as Spider Man, I also enjoy now multiple actors' performances as Superman. So I'm not a comic book reader, guys. I never had the time for it. I never made the time for it. Knowing myself, it's a sense of responsibility knowing that if I start getting into comics, I'm going to spend way too much money on it. I'm going to spend way too much time on it. That world just isn't for me. I love the stories from the comics. Whenever there's a new movie coming out, and there's some articles suggesting, hey, this trailer indicates this storyline or this character is probably showing up in this upcoming movie. I read that stuff because I find it very interesting. I know that comics have tremendous amounts of tremendous amounts of storylines that fans obviously love, or they wouldn't still be making comics today. So, my point is, for DC and Marvel, they have in their comics, they both have established multiverses. Multiverse aside, they have also redone the same version of the same character into comics. You have Wolverine, you have Old Man Logan, you have Spider-Man, you have Spider-Man 2099, you have Superman, you have multiple different versions of him. So, my point of view on the whole, you're not a real Superman fan if you like this version or that version. I just come from a point of view of appreciation for having two different versions at all. Take Fantastic Four, for example. Let's not even talk about the new one, okay, guys? You have the original two early 2000s movies, and you have the one in the 10s. Obviously, the newer one, with Miles Teller being the lead, was not generally liked at all. I personally didn't care for it all that much. But when I saw it for the first time, before finishing the movie, the thought was exciting to have a new version of these characters and these stories. It was the same way I felt going from Christian Bale to Michael Keaton to Ben Affleck to Robert Pattinson. It's just cool to see a new take on these characters. And it's the same thing with Spider-Man, and now I think it's the same thing with Superman. I'm a fan of Man of Steel, guys. I think Man of Steel is one of my favorite comic book movies. I absolutely love the crap out of that movie. But my love for that movie didn't shape my opinion on this one. And my love for this new movie doesn't change the way I feel about that old movie as well. So, obviously, there are two different directors. There were two different visions. There's two different interpretations of the characters. I think it's just cool that we get multiple versions, and that's the long dragged out point I've been trying to make for the past few minutes, is that we get multiple versions. We're not always going to like every version, but the idea of having multiple versions at all, it just fascinates me. Maybe it doesn't fascinate you. Maybe you find it tiresome that characters are recast over and over, and yes, to an extent, I do agree with that. But take Robert Pattinson, for example. We have a great interpretation of Batman. What if we stuck with Ben Affleck? What if we stuck with Christian Bale? We never would have got Robert Pattinson's version of the character. The same thing with Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire is, for me, that's Spider-Man. Okay, but Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland both had much to offer to the character, and I'm glad that we got their versions of the character also, not instead of. So, now let's dive into this movie. I'm going to stop talking about the past and other movies that have come out. That was the point I'm trying to make, is I appreciate having different versions, so let's talk about this version now. This movie did what I generally don't agree with, but ended up working out as a good thing, is skipping the origin story for Superman. The idea of where he came from and how his upbringing was is still implemented into the story, but we don't have some Fall of Krypton opening scene. So that's just sort of skipped entirely. Where Superman, I believe, 3 years. He's been Superman for 3 years. So we talk about metahumans have been on this world for a while. Superman is a little bit new. It's been 3 years he's been Superman. And Lex Luthor is an established character who has been in this universe the entire time. He's not just now starting Luthor Corps. He's been chasing after Superman for a while. But in this movie, they haven't met until this movie as far as the timeline is concerned for that. Now, when it comes to all the side characters, this is what James Gunn does best. When it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy, when the movie came out, I had never heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and when I started watching the movie, I didn't really care for all of the characters. But by the time we get to the third, by the time we get to see his vision come to fruition, obviously Rocket became his main character in the third movie, and we got a very deep, emotional, and traumatic story for a side character. That is what James Gunn does best, is taking lesser known characters, Superman aside, taking lesser known characters and making you really like them. So as we move on to talking about the side characters in Superman, that's what he did with Green Lantern. I don't think many DC fans were expecting to see a good Green Lantern probably ever. After Ryan Reynolds' version, which I did see that one, and yes, I agree, I didn't like that version at all. But I love Nathan Fillion's version of Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, in this movie. So James Gunn is already able to take one character with a sort of less than standard reputation and make people like the character again, his version. The same with Superman. Even though I love Man of Steel, there are a lot of people that didn't. And a lot of those people like the new one. And that's great for them, having a new version. They can finally have a version of the character that they can just fall in love with and root for and get to be part of this new franchise. I think that's awesome. So I'm just going to start rapid firing my opinion on a lot of the characters because there is a lot in this movie. So Lois Lane, I feel like, serves a pretty good purpose in this movie. She didn't take over for Superman's story, but she wasn't sidelined either. She sort of had her own role and her own story while having her own character development. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Lex Luthor, for me personally, was the standout just based off of the acting alone. I think Nicholas Hoult did a phenomenal job as Lex Luthor. I loved his performance. I thought that was the version of Lex Luthor I wanted to see, and I think he did a great job with it. Next side character, Green Lantern, we've already covered. Hawkgirl, I don't know much about her story. I know what the CW threw into her story, so I haven't seen many versions of her. I know a lot of people saw some of the earlier cartoons. She was included in the Justice League multiple times. So for a lot of people, it was like watching that morning cartoon again. So her being included in this movie, I didn't think that she really did all that much. She did kill the political leader in the end, but aside from that, she didn't really do anything. She was just there. So I'm hoping she'll get more screen time later, just simply to have her character more fleshed out, because like I said, that is what James Gunn does best. She is a side character. As far as this movie is concerned, she is a side character. But knowing James Gunn's history with side characters, I expect her to become a fan favorite later on. Next side character, Metamorpho. I thought he had a pretty interesting storyline in this movie. It wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't really know much about the character to begin with, but I thought it was pretty wacky seeing what he can do, what Metamorpho is really all about. And his sort of banter between the characters, I thought was great. So I thought his character was fun. There wasn't really anything I didn't like. I didn't think he was the biggest standout in the movie. I just liked his character. Then we have Mr. Terrific. He obviously was another standout. For me, Lex Luthor is the bigger standout just because of his acting. But as far as a minor character becoming really cool and getting some neat shots and action sequences, that belongs to Mr. Terrific. His action sequences weren't bountiful, but they were really cool. James Gunn did a great job with him. In the CW, Mr. Terrific is this tech character, and that's sort of what he is in this one. But they were able to. What CW did is it was just the weapons. He didn't really know how to fight well. The weapons was pretty much all he used, but he didn't know how to use them well. So it was just a very sort of toned down version of the character, I think. Whereas in this movie, he's absolutely playing to his strengths with what these T spheres, I believe is what they're called, what they can do. So I just love that interpretation of the character in this movie. I thought the actor did a really good job, and the character was fun. He was sort of the voice of reason. He was the blunt voice of reason to the characters, being able to sort of just help out, but also not drag his teammates who didn't want to be a part of it, drag them into it as well. So, yeah, I loved his role also. As far as the villains, Ultraman, I don't know much about. What little I do know about him is I know he's supposed to be a variant of Superman, and in this movie they made him a clone. So I think eliminating the multiverse aspect was a smart choice for this movie. Maybe there's some Ultraman extremists fans who were showing me disappointed with this version, but I just thought it was fine. Not having multiverse, I thought was a good choice, and having it just be a clone, it was a decent character for Superman to beat. He was someone for him to overcome and take down. The engineer, I didn't feel like served a large purpose in this movie. If she weren't in it, I feel like Ultraman's storyline could have taken over for her roles in the movie. But I thought she did fine. I had nothing against the actors. I didn't really have anything against the character. She was the only character that just felt like it was solely the extra character in the movie. Nonetheless, having two villains to take down, I thought was a really cool choice because we get to see him overcome that as well. These overwhelming odds of two villains who are basically designed to beat him, and he's able to beat them anyway. I think this speaks for himself. When everyone loves Krypto, I thought that was a great part of the movie. If you've seen some of the behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, but interviews with David Cornsweet talking about how Krypto was, put into the movie, I just find the whole process fascinating. It was a lot, I think, pretty much entirely CGI, and you just couldn't really tell. So the CGI was done really, really well. This wasn't bad looking CGI at all. I think we covered most of the characters. Eve Tessmacher played a small role. Jimmy Olsen played a small role as well. They were the concurrent characters that really only had their one roles. Their roles didn't really change into becoming something different. I've seen versions of Eve Tessmacher for where she was headed, turning on Lex. That's something what we just sort of expected, or at least someone who knows enough about Lex Luthor's character and his past. I expected that from her character, and when it happened, I wasn't surprised. But I thought the actress did a fine job with the movie, with her role that she was given in this movie. And so, Jimmy Olsen, I think, was fun. I think he was a fun character to sort of have that sort of mystery behind him, because he's, in my opinion, or as far as I can tell, I think he's one of the only characters close to Clark Kent that doesn't know he's Superman. So I think that is cool to have a reveal later in a second or third or Justice League movie. I think saving that for later is some sort of shock value that you can sort of hold on to and just pocket that till later. Speaking of pocket, the pocket dimension I thought was a little wacky. I'd seen CW The Flash, so I was familiar with the pocket dimension type of storyline. I was familiar with it already, so it wasn't difficult for me to grasp, but it's complicated enough. Maybe it wasn't the most easiest thing to understand for just average moviegoers. But overall, I've talked a lot about the different kinds of things, just giving my opinion on it. The only other thing that was a disappointment for me is the comedy. Some of it was funny, some of it wasn't. I was just very mixed. I just can't bring myself to say I loved it. I can't bring myself to say I didn't like it. I was just somewhere in between. There were some jokes that just didn't land. I didn't think were funny. Some just were kind of corny. And then some were actually pretty funny. So it was just very mixed. Let me know what you thought of the comedy. Same thing with James Gunn. Guardians 1 and 2, I was very mixed on the comedy from those. But in the third, what comedy there was, I thought was just played perfectly. So I think James Gunn is going to do really, really well with the next movies he directs, just because he has a good track record with that balance before. I just wasn't all for the balance in this one, but I'm sure I'll enjoy the next ones as well. So, Superman is supposed to be the symbol of hope, and a lot of people have sort of believed that past versions of this character didn't represent that in the way they wanted. But I think James Gunn was able to convey that in David Cornsweet's version of Superman in this movie. So he was saving a squirrel, he was battling a kaiju, he's taking on villains, he was able to overcome the gravity of a black hole. He was holding up ginormous buildings. So, for one, anyone that says Superman was weak in this movie, I don't know what movie you're watching. I didn't see a weak Superman in this version. Maybe you've seen much stronger versions. I just haven't seen enough versions to compare it to a lot of different kinds. But I didn't get the impression at all that this Superman was weak. I think the way the movie was directed was to create real stakes for the characters, and that made it seem like he lost enough for him to maybe feel weak. But I understood what he was trying to do with how the storylines were playing out, that he sacrificed for Krypto for Supergirl. So him being taken down, I didn't think was him being weak. I think that was just him choosing to just turn himself in, because that's what he did. No one beat him, so I don't know. I just didn't feel that he was weak at all. But the next one, Supergirl, she was in this movie barely. She didn't really have hardly any screen time at all. She was in for 30 seconds. But I believe Supergirl, I don't know what the full title for the movie is, but I know the Supergirl movie is next. I believe that is the next one to come out. It may not be the next DC project, but I think that is the next DC movie. So I've seen a lot of fans are speculating and doing a deep dive into how her traumatic past of her one sole purpose was to raise Clark Kent, but that didn't happen. So now she's lost, and that's why she was, this drunken lost soul in this movie. So I think James Gunn's really going to dive into that version. He said that we're going to get a new version of Supergirl we haven't really seen before. So I am looking forward to seeing a fresh new take on the character. So I'm looking forward to it. Overall, the symbol of hope, he's supposed to be the symbol of hope, and in this movie, I think it's a little bit more than that. It's not that I was just feeling hopeful after the movie. I just felt like I had hope in humanity. Just seeing people just choose to do the right thing. They may not be perfect, and they may not be great, but they're just regular people trying to do good, however that looks like to them. And I think you gotta have faith that people will do that. We have to believe most people can choose to do that. And hopefully, with this movie's success, more and more people will feel that way. There has been a large increase in dog adoption interest because of this movie. Despite it not nearing $1 billion yet, maybe the ticket prices could surge after this video, but it doesn't look like as of now it's gonna make $1 billion. But then also, a lot of retailers are suggesting that there are as large sums amount of money being spent on Superman merch in the stores. So even though this may not be some record-breaking movie, we see the positives. People buying the merch, increase in dog adoption. I think those are very strong, positive things to take away from this movie. So I think James Gunn as a director, he knows that. And I think he's definitely a person who appreciates the impact of the movie more than the financial success of the movie. So I love his work. I haven't seen enough of his work. I still want to do more of a deep dive into all of his filmography and see the rest of James Gunn's movies. But as far as this one is concerned, I am not only hopeful in the character, hopeful for humanity, but I'm also hopeful for this universe and its growth, where it's headed. I'm excited to see where it's going. James Gunn, he knows what the heck he's doing, guys. He knows exactly how to control the narrative into where he wants the overall story for the universe to go. So I'm looking forward to it, guys. Let me know what you thought. Thank you guys for watching this video. Keep it digging.